All right, everybody, get ready for a deep dive you might not expect. We're cracking open the remarkable story of Chicken Little.
A childhood classic.
Yeah, the one where the sky is falling. But this isn't just a nostalgia trip. We're going to see how this story, published by Degen, Estes and Company, the same folks who gave us all those games and puzzles, actually has a lot to say about misinformation and critical thinking, stuff that's, pretty relevant these days.
It's like they bottled up a little social psychology experiment and disguised it as a children's story. The way this barnyard drama unfolds tells us a lot about how people react in the face of uncertainty.
Okay, so picture this. Our story starts with Chicken Little, just going about her day when, boom.
A single leaf falls
Huh.
right onto her tail.
Yeah. Exactly. One leaf. But this is where things get interesting. Chicken Little, she jumps to a, shall we say, slightly dramatic conclusion.
The sky is falling.
You got it. Now, put yourself in that position. You're just walking along, and suddenly someone's yelling about the sky falling. What's your gut reaction?
I mean, you'd hope there'd be at least a little bit of skepticism.
Right, but that's what's so clever about this story. It uses repetition to show how easily we can get swept up in misinformation, especially when we don't stop to think. Chicken Little, she runs off to Hen Pen, and of course Hen Pen being a good friend, she's like, hold on, how do you know?
And what does Chicken Little say?
Well, I heard it with my ears, I saw it with my eyes, and part of it even fell on my tail. Not exactly what you call, rock-solid argument.
No, not quite. But here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of poking holes in that logic, Hen Pen just accepts it. Doesn't ask for proof, doesn't get a second opinion, nothing.
And with that, we're off to the races. They run into Duck Luck, Goosey Loose, even Turkey Lurkey shows up. And every single time, it's the same question. How do you know? But they all just buy the same flimsy answer over and over again. Nobody stops to think, hey, maybe we should double-check this whole sky falling thing.
It's like a game of telephone, except instead of a silly phrase getting jumbled up, it's panic and misinformation spreading like wildfire.
Which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. And it makes you wonder, why are these characters so quick to believe Chicken Little? I mean, sure, they're birds, but it can't just be about being gullible, right?
It's more about those deeper social dynamics at play. Think about it. Nobody wants to be the party pooper, the one who isn't freaking out when everyone else is.
Like when everyone's raving about the latest fad and you're like, I don't know, it seems kind of sus. You don't want to be the only one left out.
Exactly. And on top of that, you've got the trust factor. These characters are all part of the same community. They probably hang out, share snacks, whatever birds do. There's an inherent trust there, even if it's misplaced.
And let's not forget about the fear of being wrong. Nobody likes to admit they were wrong, especially when everyone else seems so sure of themselves. It's just easier to go along with the crowd, even if something feels off.
But it's never just about being gullible, is it? This is where the story gets really insightful. Because into this chaos walks our next character, Foxlox.
Yeah, he he changes the game a bit.
He does, because remember, they're not just running around in a panic. They're looking for a solution, someone to tell them what to do.
And Foxlox, he seems to have it all figured out, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's the epitome of calm, cool, and collected amidst all this skies-falling hysteria. But here's the thing. He doesn't actually try to calm them down. Doesn't say, hey, maybe it's just a leaf, let's take a closer look.
No, he uses their fear to his advantage.
Exactly. He plays right into it, tells them to hurry, all of them into his den, safe and sound, away from the falling sky, which, spoiler alert, is not falling.
Not exactly the best advice from a supposedly helpful stranger.
It's brilliant, though, isn't it, from a storytelling perspective? Because he's giving them exactly what their panicked minds crave. A sense of urgency, a plan of action, a safe haven. It doesn't matter that it's all a lie.
And that's the thing about misinformation, isn't it? It often sounds, well, reasonable when you're in that state of fear and uncertainty.
It preys on our desire for easy answers, especially when we're feeling vulnerable. We want someone to just tell us what to do.
And suddenly following blindly seems way easier than stopping to think critically, like, well, everyone else is doing it, so it must be right.
Right. And of course, in the story, this is where it all ends tragically for Chicken Little and her friends. They follow Foxlox into the den one by one, and, well, let's just say it doesn't end well for them.
It's a bit dark, but it makes a powerful point. Misinformation isn't just about spreading falsehoods. It can have real consequences.
Exactly. And I think Foxlox, in a way, he symbolizes those who capitalize on chaos and misinformation, whether it's for power, profit, or something else entirely.
So the question is, how do we learn to spot those red flags? How do we avoid becoming Chicken Little, especially in a world that feels, constantly bombarded with information?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And luckily, we've got some answers. Because let's be real, we all have a little bit of Chicken Little in us, right?
Or absolutely.
Yeah.
We've all had those moments where we get caught up in the hype or we hear something and just hit that share button without thinking twice.
Exactly. So how do we break that cycle? It starts with being more mindful, more critical of the information that comes our way.
So like next time I'm scrolling through my feed and see some crazy headline,
Or someone in your group chat forwards you that urgent message.
which is like always too good to be true.
That's your cue to slow down. Channel your inner Chicken Little, but in a good way. Ask yourself, okay, who's saying this? What's their deal? Do they have any real evidence?
It's like putting on your detective hat.
Right.
Question everything.
Exactly. Don't just take things at face value. Dig a little deeper, check those sources, and don't be afraid to seek out different perspectives, even if they challenge your own views.
Because, let's be honest, it's way too easy to get stuck in those echo chambers where everyone agrees with each other.
And that can be dangerous because it creates this false sense of security, like, oh, everyone I know thinks this way, so it must be right. But that's not how truth works.
So we've got to be open to being wrong sometimes, to changing our minds when presented with new information.
Absolutely. And it's okay to say, I don't know. You don't need to have an opinion on everything. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is admit you need more information.
It's like that saying, the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. And I think that's a good thing. Keeps us humble, keeps us curious.
Exactly. And speaking of learning, let's circle back to those games and puzzles from Degen, Estes & Co. They published Chicken Little, but they also gave us all those brain-bending activities that taught us how to think critically, to problem solve. Maybe there's a connection there.
Whoa, mind blown. It's like they were sneaking in life lessons all along.
Maybe they were, but the takeaway is we all have the power to be more discerning, to be more critical of the information we consume. We don't have to be Chicken Little.
So to wrap things up, the next time you're about to hit that share button or you hear something that sets off your internal "sky is falling" alarm, remember Chicken Little. Remember Fox Locks. Ask those tough questions. And who knows, you might just save yourself and your friends from ending up as someone else's lunch.
Now that's a thought to cluck about.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the remarkable story of Chicken Little, brought to you by Degen, Estes & Co. of Boston. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and keep those brains buzzing.